I want to clarify what the law is there in Minnesota. Abortion Finder, a website that helps women find access, says abortion is legal throughout pregnancy in Minnesota. There is no ban or limit on abortion in Minnesota based on how far along in a pregnancy you are. You signed the bill that makes it legal through all 9 months. Is that a position you think Democrats should advocate for nationally?
Look, the vice president and I have been clear. The restoration of Roe versus Wade is what we're asking for.
But that law goes far beyond Roe v. Wade.
To make her own choice. The law is very clear. It does not change that. That was been debunked on every occasion.
But wait. Let's agree. What you signed is there's not a single limit through 9 months of pregnancy. Roe had a trimester framework that did have limits through the pregnancy. The Minnesota law does not have that.
You know, he's just not very good at this. So today, Tim Walz sat down with Fox News for an interview, and that is pretty significant because that is the first time that anyone on their ticket has talked to a network that was remotely hostile. Although, before you try to give him too much credit for it, there is obviously a reason why, which is they know they keep getting constantly criticized for this, and you even have people within their own circle saying, look, you gotta do a few interviews. You gotta do something, right? We have, for instance, here, Joe Walsh, who is a total Trump deranged Lincoln Project Democrat voter, went out today and said, look, I'd still support Kamala Harris even if she never left her house these final 30 days because Donald Trump is a lawless, un-American psychopath. But that is just me. That's not most voters. I don't think she can win if she just tries to ride a vibe to the White House. I don't think she can win by just counting on Trump being so bad. She has to get out there more. And this is ultimately why Walz decided to do Fox News. It's not because he expected it to go well. They know every time they sit down for an interview, they get steamrolled, but he was kind of forced into it. And we'll show you what happened here today, folks. But first, do us a big favor. If you enjoy the content, be sure to hit that like button and subscribe if you are new to the channel. Your subscriptions go a long way in ensuring we can keep bringing you videos like this, and in an election year, it is especially important that you help us fight back against the censorship, and it is free. All you got to do is hit that red button down below. And with that said, take a listen here to Tim Walz's hilarious implosion on Fox as the interviewer tries to bring up something that was also talked about in the VP debate, which is the Minnesota abortion law that Walz claims is not real, is not true. It just doesn't exist, even though it clearly does, and it doesn't exactly go well. So let's check it out.
And
it's about character.
Let's focus on what your position is and the vice president's position as well. I want to talk about abortion too, because this came up at the debate. It's been a winning argument for Democrats on many ballots, but I want to clarify what the law is there in Minnesota. Abortion Finder, a website that helps women find access, says abortion is legal throughout pregnancy in Minnesota. There is no ban or limit on abortion in Minnesota based on how far along in a pregnancy you are. You signed the bill that makes it legal through all 9 months. Is that a position you think Democrats should advocate for nationally?
Look, the vice president and I have been clear. The restoration of Roe versus Wade is what we're asking for.
But that law goes far beyond Roe v. Wade.
To make her own choice. The law is very clear. It does not change that. That was been debunked on every occasion.
But wait.
Debunked by who? Here he goes again, right? When JD Vance brought up the receipts in the VP debate, he said, it's debunked. Debunked by who? That's abortionfinder.org. That's what it says. This is the law that you signed. And as usual, the Democrats just run around in circles saying, that's misinformation, kind of like the Hunter Biden laptop story that we might remember from the last presidential election. Same exact strategy here. But let's see if he has anything else to say.
Disagree. What you signed is there's not a single limit through 9 months of pregnancy. Roe had a trimester framework that did have limits through the pregnancy. The Minnesota law does not have that.
This puts the decision with the woman and her healthcare providers. The situation we have is when you don't have the ability of healthcare providers to provide that, that's where you end up with a situation like Amanda Zaworski in Texas, where they are afraid to do what's necessary. This doesn't change anything. It puts the decision back on to the woman, to the physicians, and we know that this is simply something to be brought up to be very clear. Donald Trump's asking for a nationwide abortion ban.
He said repeatedly that he will not sign a national abortion ban. Are you calling that just, it's a flat out lie?
Yes, of course. And Senator Vance has in the past said so too. Now, look, they may see this as an election issue. We see it as a right of women to make their own bodily decisions. And that's what the states like my state have the ability to put that in. States like Georgia force women to cross the border, and then we have a death of Amber Thurman. So let's be very clear. Trying to cut hairs on an issue on this is not where the American public's at. They want the restoration of Roe versus Wade. Vice President Harris said she would sign it. That's what we'll do when we're elected.
But to be clear,
okay, so total deflection. So he does not deny. He says it's debunked, but then he basically says it doesn't, and then he praises his own Minnesota law. He does not deny that his bill that he signed allows abortion all the way up until birth. It does not matter like what point in the pregnancy or whatever. Okay, so just for the record, he's admitting that, but then he deflects it to say, oh, but Donald Trump wants a national abortion ban, even though Trump explicitly says he does not want a national abortion ban. But you know what Tim Walz did literally not just say, but sign into law? Abortion up until birth. Okay, so there you have it.
Minnesota law is far beyond Roe v. Wade. And about the Amber Thurman case in Georgia, her family has, and it's tragic, she is a young mother who left behind a young son. But what her family has said is it was a complication from an abortion pill that she received, and she didn't get proper care when she went to a Georgia hospital, which had multiple opportunities to intervene there. Her own attorney, the family's attorney, says it wasn't the Georgia law, it was the hospitals, what he claims is malpractice, not treating her when she clearly showed up in distress and still had the byproducts of her pregnancy because of that rare complication from the abortion pill. So just to be clear on the Georgia law and how her family and her attorney sees it.
I think they also indicated that had she not go to North Carolina after the debate the other night, that she would have been in a better position. So look, these are the situations you're going to get into when you take this decision and put it in the hands of politicians like Donald Trump rather than women and their doctors. We trust women, we trust doctors, and we know the outcomes of that are better.
Okay, let's clarify more changes that you signed in Minnesota as well.
More deflection, by the way. Once again, he gets debunked, and all he does is deflect, okay? So she has destroyed that false narrative about the abortion pill and that whole story. She's pointed out and given the receipts of how the Minnesota abortion law literally has no restrictions on abortion. That is not made up. That's right there. And all Tim Walz has to say is he's brought back the same lost and confused face from the VP debate. Okay, and this is arguably more brutal than the VP debate itself because the host is in control actually now of the situation. Yeah, Timmy, there are no moderators now to say, JD, your time is up. JD, we have to move on. No, you are now in the lion's den and you see exactly what's going on here. He has no response to any of this. It's horrendous.
Several things were repealed with respect to reporting infants who may have survived an abortion attempt. Language that used to be part of the statute was taken out. We'll put this on the screen so people can see. It used to require medical personnel to, quote, preserve the life and health of the born alive infant. That language has been repealed. It's no longer part of the law. Also struck from the law was language about reporting infants that are born alive, what treatment they receive, and whether they live or die. Why was it important to you to get that protection out of the law?
Minnesota law aligns with every other case of what physicians are required by their ethical responsibilities. And so it changed nothing other than aligning with all care that physicians provide in any circumstance for any medical case. And so it's alignment as it's always been. It's the cases we've seen in Minnesota, the outcomes we get in our healthcare results are the best in the nation. And all it did was align with existing law.
But you do.
Okay, so he doesn't answer the question. But interestingly enough, that does confirm a thing Donald Trump has talked about, which everyone always says, oh, that's a lie. That doesn't exist, which is if we read back to the language here, we're talking about abortion after birth, right? An infant who is born alive should be fully recognized as a human person. And they crossed out the language that says as a result of abortion. So it's right there. It's right there. And Tim Walz has no response. Very interesting.
We will restore the rights of Roe versus Wade. We will make sure women have their health care decisions. We will not put people's lives at risk because of the geography of where they live. And it will go back to the way it was before Donald Trump gleefully said, we've got the best of both worlds here. Things are wonderful. The states are handling it. It's a beautiful thing. It's not a beautiful thing to see women dying. It's not a beautiful thing to put doctors at risk of being imprisoned.
It is not. It is not to see any single woman suffer. And by the way, there's not a single state, no matter how pro-life or restrictive their laws are, that do not allow a doctor to intercede. That's true in Georgia and Texas as well. I want to turn to the economy. Our latest polling shows that 66% of Americans we talked to said that buying groceries is a, quote, major problem for them. And when we ask people about how they feel about the policies of this administration versus the previous, double the amount of people surveyed say that Biden-Harris policies have hurt them rather than help them and their families economically. That's in stark contrast to how they feel when asked about the Trump administration. So what would a Harris-Walz administration do different than a Biden-Harris administration when it comes to convincing people that the economy is going to get better for them because their perception is that it's not?
Well, we saw a blockbuster jobs report this week. We saw interest rates come down, and we've also seen that Vice President Harris laying out a middle-class agenda. Look, I was in Ohio yesterday, in Cleveland, in Cincinnati, and talking about this. Folks in Ohio know that Donald Trump's policies led to 180,000 manufacturing jobs leaving. They understand when he left office, we had more people unemployed percentage-wise than the Great Depression. What Vice President Harris is talking—
Then why did they vote for him in 2020? And why are they going to vote for him again in 2024? Okay.
Talking about is making it more affordable to buy housing. And we've seen it in Minneapolis. When you have more housing stock, we've seen rates go down. We've seen more houses available. Also, the idea of price gouging.
In Minneapolis? Yeah, I think, guys, let's have a little speculation here. What may have contributed, let's just say hypothetically, since the year 2020, what may have contributed to people moving out of Minneapolis and hence the real estate costs going down because there is more supply than demand of people trying to move there. Anyone want to take a guess at what could have caused that? Why would the real estate market have crashed in Minneapolis where it's soaring across the rest of the country? Comment your thoughts down below. I think there's a pretty obvious answer. But yeah, with that said, ladies and gentlemen, you basically get the point here. Tim Walz, this is exactly what happens when the vibes-based campaign of Kamala Harris is met with reality and actually going to ask real questions and follow up on those questions, which is not something that Dana Bash obviously did when she interviewed Kamala, much less the MSNBC one that was asking her about how she likes her fries or something like that. But this is how it goes. And in fairness, look, the main cope of liberal media after the VP debate was that, well, the reason JD Vance destroyed him is because Tim Walz was not media trained enough. And it's like, is that really what it is? Because I think you can see from here, honestly, I don't think any amount of media training could have prepared Tim Walz for this, because on these questions, the facts are simply not on his side, especially with that abortion stuff, right? He claims that the Minnesota abortion law does not say things that it clearly does, like it's literally right there in the law. And then, of course, his position of what the Republicans believe on abortion and what Trump stands for is a complete straw man. And that one story he always tries to tell about the abortion pill, as the Fox News host brings up, is not even accurate. It is not even true. So if you have someone who actually knows the facts going up against Tim Walz, it doesn't matter how inarticulate or bad he is. He could be the most sharp debater to ever exist. It's very hard to talk your way out of those things because the receipts are not in your favor. Okay. But with that said, there's just a little bit of the Tim Walz Fox News interview. I would argue it was more brutal than the VP debate, but just not an overall good week for him. Do not be surprised if this was their one and done, right? They're just going to both collectively hide in the basement away from the cameras for the rest of the election cycle because it's just not going well for them. Okay. And every time they open their mouths in a TV interview, you have to imagine their poll numbers are dropping. So regardless of whatever Joe Walsh says, maybe it's probably in their best interest to just give up on doing this. Because yes, it is obviously a bad thing to not take interviews, but it might be even worse to take interviews and every time you get destroyed in them. But that said, let me know your thoughts on all of this in the comment section down below. Be sure to leave a like on this video, subscribe to the channel to help support our work. And until next time, God bless and peace.